A warm and hearty welcome to yet another edition of the Nation Leadership Forum. As always, this is a platform that creates an interface between state actors, non-state actors, and you and I, the general public. And the key takeaway is to see how we can move the economic and growth agenda going forward. It is the 27th of June 2020, a day when countries across the globe are marking the World SME Day, this year themed The Great Lockdown and the Impact on SMEs. In Kenya, SMEs play a significant role, including contributing an estimated 34% of the country's economic output and accounting for the lion's share of employment created annually. This significance notwithstanding, SMEs face grave challenges, with 4 out of every 10 closing within their first year of operation and only 2 out of every 10 living to celebrate their 5th birthday. This afternoon, we are asking, how has COVID-19 impacted SMEs? What opportunities and challenges have been presented, and how can SMEs tide through the present crisis? To explore this and more, I am joined by Adam Jones, who is the Area Head and Vice President for Mastercard East Africa. I'm also joined by Nazim Devji, the Group CEO and Managing Director for Diamond Trust Bank. I'm also joined by Aaron Feinstein, who is the co-founder and CEO of Ecommerce firm DPO Group. And finally, Shiko Gitao, who is the CEO at Kala and who specializes in business transformation. Shiko, I should add, is also a member of Kenya's ICT Advisory Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on set. And before we delve into this subject, let me just say you can be part of this conversation by tweeting at NTV Kenya, at AmbokoJH. Other Twitter handles are at DPO Group, at Mastercard MEA, and at DTB Kenya. Let's just begin by asking Adam, SMEs have taken a particularly significant hit in light of COVID-19 through disrupted supply chains, subdued revenues. What is Mastercard doing to prop up SMEs in light of the present challenges?
Well, good afternoon, Julians, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to join your viewers today to discuss this very critical subject on SMEs on this historical day. This is, after all, World SME Day. Unfortunately, this year, SMEs are being faced with the biggest challenge that they've had in recent times, with the impact of COVID having unequivocally compromised their positions, not just from a health point of view, but also maybe even greater from an economic standpoint. Undoubtedly, SMEs are the lifeblood of all economies globally. SMEs represent, according to the World Bank, something in the region of 77% of employment and over half of GDP across Africa. When you consider that and you consider the engine room that they are for the economy, you realize that we must do all that we can as stakeholders within the digital ecosystem to ensure that their growth is supported, to ensure their growth is maintained. And MasterCard in that regard is no different. We've been doing a number of things over the years to ensure that we're breeding the kind of inclusion into the digital and financial ecosystem which supports the economies, in Kenya and beyond. And to that end, we've made commitments over the years. If you're going to deliver to support the SME community, you have to set challenging targets. In 2015, for example, we set a goal of financially including 500 million people across the world, which we're pleased to say that we achieved. This year, we've announced that we will take that target one further to financially include in the digital ecosystem 1 billion people. And of those 1 billion, 50 million being SMEs and 25 million being female entrepreneurs. And we'll undertake a number of programs around the world and locally within Africa and within Kenya to ensure that we're doing everything we can to help stimulate the economy, help drive insight, and help deliver the kind of digital solutions which ultimately empower all of the SMEs and MSMEs to be able to buy, sell, and achieve their target. To that end, we've made a further commitment. We've made $250 million commitment to support SMEs in areas that will benefit their business by providing insight, by providing digital tools into the economy that will allow for e-commerce to be developed and grown so that the SME can sell their product more effectively and can take their revenue in a seamless and efficient manner through digital payments. And by doing this, we hope that we will kickstart even further and support the SMEs in these challenging COVID times.
Right. Many thanks, Adam. Quite some ambitious targets there. And just to cross over to Nasim, Adam is saying that this is the biggest challenges that SMEs have faced in recent times. But also on the flip side, this has presented an opportunity where SMEs can leverage a more robust ecosystem to work within themselves and to see how to devise solutions. Nasim, share some ideas with us regarding this.
Thank you for the question, Julian. Very good question. As we are all aware, SMEs are the backbone of our economy, and it is important that they receive support during these difficult times. With the evolution of the Internet of Things, I believe it is technology that will steer their business going forward. In light of this, the bank entered into partnership with Direct Pay Online, DPO as we call them, and MasterCard to provide a specific product where these SMEs can benefit from moving their business from brick and mortar to e-commerce as a route to market. Whilst this product has been available to our customers, the pandemic has just fast-tracked the onboarding of SMEs almost 3 to 5-fold. Here, DTB is playing the role of an enabler and leveraging on the assets and expertise of DPO and MasterCard to avail access to e-commerce platform to our SMEs. Let me give you an example. There is a customer of ours, a neighborhood grocery store, that has grown organically over a short period of time. The pandemic challenged them to relook at how they would get to their customers. They had no choice but to make online shopping available. They initially began by taking orders through WhatsApp and then graduated to the online e-commerce platform, which provides a better user experience for its customers as it displays pictures of the products and allows customers to browse through their catalog of items.
Great. Some good thoughts there from Nasim. And just to move to Aaron, Nasim is talking about how SMEs are looking at pivoting through this crisis. And pre-COVID, we were told that about 39% of Kenyan businesses were engaging in e-commerce in one way or another. I'm certain that this has changed. What's your experience, Aaron, because you're in this e-commerce field?
First, good afternoon. I'm very happy, with this special day when we celebrate with all the SMEs around the world. Well, the adoption of e-commerce, and the willingness to pay online more broadly has grown considerably in the last few years across the whole of the sub-Saharan region in general, and here in Kenya in particular. I know it reflects a growing middle-class population, shift in consumer appetite towards online shopping. We're still not yet in the level of other markets like maybe South Africa. But the appetite and the demand for innovation, it's here. To put this growth in some perspective, I'll give you an example from DPO. Since 2015 to date, our e-commerce transactions volume more than doubled itself year on year. Another positive sign, looking at the last 3 months when COVID restrictions were applied, we had more new merchants registration to our online e-commerce platform than we had in the previous 6 months. It's quite remarkable. Other than South Africa and Nigeria, East Africa and Kenya in particular is at the forefront of the rise of e-commerce in Africa due to large part of widespread use of mobile money, of course. It makes it easier, quicker for online shoppers to transact. We can see it also with data that was released by CBK that during April and May, mobile money transaction significantly grew. So COVID-19 definitely has accelerated this trend. As we have experienced here in Kenya, government moved to reduce cash transaction. Very, very important. Many businesses have had to close their physical stores and move online in order to stay in contact with their customers. So we've seen a sharp spike in merchants coming to us for an online solution to allow them to get involved with e-commerce, not only to keep their business running throughout the pandemic, and this is very important, but to emerge with greater resilience once the pandemic and the curfew measures will be behind us.
And before I cross over to Shiko, Aaron, let me just stay with you with one more question. We do understand that the bulk of e-commerce transactions in Kenya happen in the wholesale and retail segment of the economy. What's your experience like? Are you seeing a homogeneous trend across sectors, or is it concentrated again in this particular sector?
It goes all across sectors, but there are those sectors which are as always, leading. I will take the example Nassim gave us from mid-March to date, supermarkets, small restaurants, all those shops which provide essential services and products. It was a huge surprise. They popped up, they came to us, and they led that growth. Now that more SMEs or more micro businesses can smell the post-COVID era, we can see more and more businesses comes online and wants to go into this arena.
Right, and before we cross to Shiko, let me just get back to Adam. Adam, streamlining payment platforms has always been a headache for many SMEs, with many saying that they suffer revenue leakages in one way or another. What can be done in the digital payment platforms to at least address this challenge being faced by SMEs?
I think streamlining is a critical point that you raise. Ultimately, you need to remove the friction. You need to make the systems capable of supporting the needs of the SMEs so that they can also deliver more value to their customers. I mean, ultimately, that's the main game of the digitization of the payments. There's challenges on the consumer side. There's challenges with, for example, if they're going traditionally and utilizing cash, there's challenges with the cost associated with cash. The risk of loss, the cost of handling the cash, potential theft and whatnot. So there's a big cost associated and burden that's placed upon the consumer. From an SME point of view, there's the opportunity cost of them having to handle cash, of them having to run that risk themselves of loss. And so by putting in place platforms, solutions, the likes of which, Aaron has just been alluding to, by doing that, you drive the efficiency to remove the leakages, to remove the obstacles to commerce, and ultimately then allow the SMEs to flourish as best they can. We're very fortunate across Africa with such an established digital ecosystem, with the strength of mobile money, with that being played in symphony alongside all the digital forms of payment, that actually when those platforms are put in place to good effect, you see individual industries come alive. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There's SME farmers that are out there with platforms that have been built in Nairobi in our Lab for Financial Inclusion, such as the Farmers Network. We're actually able to allow farmers to trade between themselves and the buyers and the wholesalers, to allow them to buy and sell, to therefore remove inefficiencies in the program, to allow them to get a fairer price for their products. And this is a platform that was, developed in Gigiri. It was developed in Nairobi. It's being utilized in Tanzania, in Uganda, and as far away as India. So this sort of African-born product is actually now giving efficiencies to SME farmers out there to allow them to boost their revenues. Even things such as, in Kenya, the Jazaduka program, which we pioneered with Unilever, actually allows SMEs to obtain access to the more formal financial tools that historically, because of maybe lack of formal data availability, it allows them to access free of charge credit so that they can buy the goods that they wish rather than the goods that they can afford. And so by doing this, those leakages, those inefficiencies that you refer to, by harnessing the power of digitization, by using the platforms the likes of which DTB and DPO are providing with the e-commerce marketplace, we're allowing the SMEs to flourish, and we're ensuring that we're doing our bit to allow them to keep on the long run to economic growth and to flourishing.
And Adam, just to stay with you on that point, a question coming online here is that how starkly different in terms of these leakages is the SME landscape vis-a-vis the large business landscape from your experience?
I think within the SME marketplace, by the nature of the informality of it and the historical lack of digitization, it means that SMEs have not had access to some of the tools that big business, that big commerce has. You know, big business is able to potentially run all of its payments through, all digital formats, either via the banks, via card payments, virtual payments on cards, and so on. And so they have those, that inclusion within the digital ecosystem already exists, and it's afforded to them. But SMEs, by the informality of their nature, by possibly the lack of, formal historical performance and so on, means that maybe, for example, they can't establish credit lines. Maybe they can't actually trade in a digital format at a time when people are looking to do it. We're looking to, with the reality of what's happened with COVID, we're now seeing that, SMEs are moving online as they've done with DPO. They're putting their goods and their services on the internet to allow more people to be able to access them. And obviously that requires a digital form of payment. Now, in coming into that space with the inclusion into that digital ecosystem, you start to see the removal of those barriers, and it allows the SMEs to take advantage of the benefits that big business has enjoyed for many years.
Right. Coming back to Nassim, the issue of scalability and diversification has really taken center stage in light of the COVID-19 shock that many businesses, and particularly SMEs, are facing. Now, you engage with SMEs on a day-to-day basis. Just share with us what your experience has been like in terms of how the SMEs are navigating through diversification.
Julian's great question on an SME day. Thank you. So SMEs need to understand where they are placed in the ecosystem or supply chain that they operate in. This will enable them to leverage on bigger players within their system so as to ease their route to market. Again, let me give you an example. Immediately the pandemic hit the country, businesses were forced to rethink how to reach their customers and support not only their own operation, but the hundreds of SMEs in their ecosystem. A good example in our customer is Art Cafe, who came up with a marketplace. Within 2 weeks, with the assistance of DTP and DPO, they launched an online store listing not only their own products, but helping its suppliers, who are largely SMEs, to list their products too, and reach out to customers directly, which the suppliers did not do in the normal course of business. This process, and this is very important for me to tell you, did not require any sort of funding. What this did to the suppliers, who are SMEs, it allowed them to leverage on the logistics and customer base of the larger player within the ecosystem to allow business continuity through these challenging times. So, Julians, to conclude, it is safe to say, in order to survive this pandemic, SMEs need to be innovative, agile, and continue to leverage on their networks, be they larger suppliers, larger consumers, or those small consumers who were their footfalls.
Quite some impressive trickle down by way of the supply chain effect you have pointed out, Nassim, there. I want to cross over to Aaron. And Aaron, one of the things that COVID-19 has brought to the fore is the digital divide that exists, because there are businesses which, much as others are tapping into these digital solutions, others are being left behind. I'm just curious to know what you think in terms of what can be done by both state and non-state actors to address this challenge.
While Adam and Nassim spoke, I thought of it, and any crisis reveal those layers and expose, for example, SMEs to those dimensions that they tend not to be exposed to. The COVID-19 pandemic has shed light on many of the challenges Kenyans are facing. The informal economy and SMEs in particular have certainly been much more severely impacted by these restrictions that the government put in place to curb the spread of this virus. Many of them historically, brick and mortar companies, they had very little access to online capacity. Now, I represent here the payments industry, and we got a very important role. We certainly has an important role to play in supporting these businesses, the SMEs. Our role is to provide them with technology and to move their business online, quickly and securely, as fast as can. Sometimes the solution may be very close as they think. I'm always inspired, by innovation and energy I see here in Kenya, of course. And there are an increasing number of ways in which SME can leverage in technology. I'll tell you our story. It started in late February, toward mid-March. We at DPO were becoming concerned with how the pandemic was unfolding globally, and the risk not only to the health of individual, but also to many businesses here in Kenya, which got no online presence. We wanted to try and address some of the challenges and to help these merchants to what we call to reinvent their business. New times, this is the time to do something completely different. And how? Very simple, offering fast, secure online capability. It's a quick e-commerce solution. The solution that we developed store.
I seem to have had a challenge a little bit there with Aaron, but as we try to get him back, let's just have a chat with Shiko. Shiko, glad to have you on set. Let's talk a little bit about policy. And if you look at Kenya's digital economic blueprint, one of the key areas which is normally highlighted is that the government movement to digital services should form the backbone for the private sector now to come on board. How do you feel we're doing as far as this is concerned, and how this is impacting the digital adaptation?
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry for that technical problem we have earlier, and I'm glad to be here. I think as Kenya, we are doing much, much better than the region. We have like a great connectivity. We have great infrastructure in place. And the government itself is putting measures in place to ensure that SMEs are thriving. So for example, to register a company in Kenya, it's all online. It takes less than 7 days. And you're able to go on operation. You're able to submit your taxes online. You're able to do everything online without having to go and make long queues, which is a good thing. And in terms of SMEs and being a bias towards the digital, we are seeing that many more Kenyans are getting online. I was following the other conversations as the technical thing was being cleared, and I had the DPO conversation. And we just, like my company, we just finished a study around how businesses are pivoting. We are seeing small businesses, very micro SMEs, actually pivoting to digital. We are seeing the mama chapatis, your roadside food seller is now selling on WhatsApp because the traffic and footfall to their place has fallen down. And they're doing that. And they're making much more money, and at a more secure place, which is within their home, which is a good thing. And they're employing more people. So you can see, if I was making 20 or 30 chapatis, and now being able to order for 60 or 70, I'm able to employ somebody else, which is actually a good thing. The M-Pesa thing, mobile money being zero related for up to 1,000 shillings, as somebody mentioned earlier, has increased the number of people who are using. Earlier, you'll take an Uber and somebody will say, do you have cash? I don't want to use M-Pesa because it was going to charge me. But now everybody's accepting M-Pesa for all their transactions. And you're seeing many of these small retailers actually accepting this money. The one gap we have seen, and we have seen people like KEPS are trying to solve, is on the supply side and the supply chain. We are seeing a lot of solutions around the consumer side, being able to make sure that the supply gets to the consumer, but the back end of that is not really being solved. We are seeing that during COVID, especially the first few weeks when the close down happened, many SMEs actually suffered because most of their supply chain was actually disrupted. Then how do you solve for this from a technology point of view, from a policy point of view? So the UK Tech Lab, we have partnered with them, and Kayana, which is an accelerator for women, and Sandbox, which is an accelerator for SMEs, to see how do you solve for SMEs as a customer, not just as for their customers. How do you make sure that their supply chain is not disrupted? So we are working with them on something called a business connection program by the UK government through the UK Tech Lab that is actually solving for this. And we're seeing many SMEs coming and say we are solving for them. We're able to supply for them information about supply chain. We're able to connect them with the supply chain and information and mentorship and credit with people like DTB to solve for this gap that is lagging. From a government point of view, we are seeing programs like the Startup Connect with Industry from the Ministry of Digitalization, who are helping like startups connect with industry to help them accelerate their solutions and their problem solving. So, and then of course there's our favorite project, Ajira, which is a soft skills program that is helping young people not only build skills around the digital age, but also becomes micro entrepreneurs, because you have to employ yourself to be able to access these small employments online. So those are the few examples I would point out. Thank you.
Many thanks, Shiko. And I think the take-home point that Shiko is raising there is that we need to curate solutions which are tailored specifically for interventions in the SME space. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back with a lot more, including your feedback on the social media platforms. Don't go too far. Once again, welcome to the Nation Leadership Forum. It is the World SME Day, and today we are placing specific focus on that segment of the businesses because they drive this economy. They're the key employment creators, and it's important we see how they can tide through the COVID-19 crisis. Before the break, we were discussing a number of issues, including what interventions have been made and what players like MasterCard are doing. And I want to start with Aaron in this segment. And Aaron, there's a question coming from a gentleman called Ochieng online, and he's asking a question which I actually had in mind, that one key concern around e-commerce is consumer protection. Because largely, if you look at the Kenyan landscape, for example, the online platforms are not regulated under the Kenya Information and Communication Authority. So the question is, how are consumers on the e-commerce platform guaranteed of consumer protection, Aaron?
That's, it's even more than important. It's a critical question and a critical issue. And why is that? Because without security, from both sides, consumers and merchants, it won't work. Just like that. Now you mentioned certification, regulations, etc. The payment space is highly regulated, and players around that space must follow these regulations. For example, Adam is here with us. MasterCard is one of the regulators in this space. There are lots of standards, lots of guidelines, and clear instructions. For the consumers, they must make sure that they follow basic rules. They won't share their personal information with anyone. They check that the website is secure. From the merchant side, with whom they work, they must select carefully the supplier which can provide them with a secure platform that will secure not only the merchant but also the consumer which shop online. But that's critical. I can assure you that when we are looking at players like MasterCard, like DTB, and obviously DPO, these players are following the rules. And this is what makes this environment highly secured one.
Right, and before I come to Adam, let me just cross over to Shiko. Shiko, let's get your thoughts in light of the issue of consumer protection, especially for those who are on e-commerce and largely feel they might be vulnerable in one way or another.
So let's start with the fact that we are all vulnerable. The fact that you switch on your computer, you put your details online, you're already vulnerable. That awareness is the first measure for protecting yourself. So whether yourself, your business, your child, you need to be aware you're already vulnerable because you're using the internet. Then how do you protect your business? Because today is the SME Day, and one of the things that we look at when we're looking at digitization and innovation is, as a small company or as an SME, what are where do you store your data? What kind of data are you are you collecting? What kind of due diligence are you doing on your clients? And where is this data stored in terms of data residency in itself? And once you have these questions answered, and we're not asking you to have like a long, laborious data protection policy, it's just an awareness that I'm collecting very sensitive data about people's names, IDs, their residence, maybe their payment details. When you're already aware of this and the fact that, number one, you're already vulnerable, it's like putting a lock and then saying, okay, putting a door, then putting a lock, and then we're going to say, because I have this information, maybe I'm going to hire an askari, or I'm going to put an electric fence or something like that. So you get the equivalent of those things in place depending on how much of this information you have. And there are many companies and people in Kenya that are willing to give that kind of service to small SMEs, so they don't have to die trying to do this themselves. And most of the platforms, like I'm pretty sure DPO is doing, already have with some of these secure mechanisms in place to protect data for the SMEs. But it starts with awareness. And when I talk to people about data protection, I would say is that make sure that you are aware of what you are vulnerable against and what attacks you are vulnerable, then you're able to protect yourself.
Chiko, I'll be coming back to you with more questions regarding the data protection, especially in light of the legislation which was passed last year. But let me cross over to Adam. And Adam, the question here is, many out here are wondering, if you look at Kenya, for example, we have some 29 active mobile money accounts in this country. Some are thinking, what's the next frontier for this space, especially for a player like MasterCard, who is largely into this digital financial solutions? What do you see as the next frontier with a focus on SMEs?
So I think, Julian, we're in a very unique position with over 50% of mobile money being, centered within Africa, and Kenya being at the forefront of that technology and, a global leader. It presents a tremendous opportunity to really accelerate the overall gains in inclusion. Now, that could be financial inclusion, as has been traditionally discussed. But financial inclusion is something that really gathers momentum when use cases are put into play, when value is delivered to the SMEs and to the users of those systems. And so to have access to a financial tool in whatever variety it might be is only the starting point. What's really required is to ensure that the value is available for the users, such as the points that I touched on earlier, would say the farming network. But also it goes way beyond that. There's the systems that we've developed which allow for energy inclusion. Digitization is now allowing people to access electricity when they're not on the grid. So, for example, we launched a program in Uganda recently with Nairobi's own M-Copper, which allows for QR payments to actually facilitate access to solar energy, which means that SMEs, which historically could not get on the power grid, have suddenly got access to solar power batteries, which allow them, in the early stages to maybe power a light in their shop, or maybe as they grow, they can get access to be able to pay for, get access to refrigerators, televisions, anything like that that's facilitating their business. So as this inclusion story grows, then you see that the cases become real and genuinely support the SMEs. Now, also another piece to consider is actually how do we utilize the infrastructure and maybe some of the challenges that exist with historical lack of infrastructure in Africa. Now, we see as mobile money and as digital payments, there's been a leapfrogging. The traditional payments model doesn't necessarily apply, and actually probably the economics don't necessarily lend themselves to Dukas, bottom of pyramid stores. And so what we've seen is actually how can we work in symphony with the mobile operators to actually leverage that and drive scalable solutions that are affecting to the better the lives of people in the countries. One example of this would be, for example, in Tanzania, where we've actually deployed QR capabilities, so quick response codes, which rather than point of sale terminals, which people may recognize where you put your card, you tap your card or you put your card in. This is effectively a sticker, which then the mobile phone is able to read and a payment, transfer of value is permitted to take place. Now, we've got something like 14 million customers using this in Tanzania in areas as diverse as paying for matatu journeys. They're riding bodabodas and paying with QR. They're going your independent SME bodaboda driver is actually going into the fuel station and able to pay with QR or USSD on the MasterCard network to actually allow them to take advantage of those digital efficiencies.
Yeah.
So when you see this kind of scale capability, you see the removal of cash from the ecosystem, which is ultimately better from an efficiency point of view from some of those costs I outlined earlier. But it makes the lives of the consumer, but also the lives of the SME far more streamlined. And by doing this, you do see that next wave of inclusion that goes to my earlier point. Inclusion is the starting point. It's everyday use, it's everyday value that then really makes this something to really celebrate for the SMEs, because it means hopefully they can sell more of whatever they're selling, or they can interact more with their customers. So yeah, that's where it is. But my one point I would leave with, none of that exists without confidence in safety and security, as you pointed out, something MasterCard spends billions on annually. So if a payment mechanism is safe, secure, and reliable, then the consumers will have the confidence to use it.
Adam, I'll be coming back to you, but let me just cross over to Nasim. And Nasim, there's a lot of interest out here regarding the question of how are SMEs being handled as far as risk profiling is concerned from a banking perspective. Now, this is something you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Just share with us some insights, because there are many SMEs who are keen to understand exactly how this is turning out.
Julian, thank you for that question. Appreciate. It is obvious that the pandemic has changed the risk profile of all borrowing customers. Businesses have been hit from both ends. Demand side, with consumers having less disposable income and their supply chains disrupted. Fortunately for us, our regulator, the Central Bank of Kenya, realized this early on in March and has been working very closely with the banks to provide different avenues to cushion the SMEs through various support channels. The regulator is very much aligned with the financial institutions to support the SME sector, because it is critical that all of us together, we keep the lights on of the SMEs. Now, what does this mean? With the support of the CBK, who have reduced both the CBR and CRR, banks have been able to restructure existing facilities as well as extend moratorium for the credit facilities of customers who have been affected by the pandemic. To date, some 35 billion shilling has been released to the banks by the Central Bank of Kenya. What is even more encouraging, I would say, is in the last budget speech, CS Treasury put aside 3 billion shillings as seed capital for a credit guarantee scheme, and has further invited other development partners to increase the capitalization or to increase this fund, on which banks will leverage to extend fresh credit to deserving SMEs. As we speak, the government, together with the regulator and financial institutions, are working on this framework to effectively onward support SMEs through their partial scheme. It is important that we do not create a financial crisis from a health crisis. I hope your viewers would have understood my question, your question and my response.
Many thanks, Nasim. I think that is quite loud and clear in terms of what is being done from a banking sector's perspective to cushion SMEs, particularly in this particular point. Crossing over to Shiko. Shiko, you mentioned earlier a number of things which I'd like just to get back to, especially in light of the Data Protection Act of 2019, which was passed in November last year. Many are just of the view that to what degree does this concern around my security, my data when I go online and engage in some e-commerce, to what extent extent is this derailing perhaps uptake by SMEs of these digital solutions? Because finally, their concern is to reach their market.
So the biggest strength, and I'll put it more like in a very strong way, the data protection gives the right of your data to you as a consumer, as an individual. So you have the right to give your data to anybody to use, and how they use it, you manage how you use it. So the data protection is about the collection, control, management, and storage of data. And you have to give your consent for anybody to use that data. And so for an e-commerce site, whenever I like the people say that the biggest lie in the world is I agree to these terms and conditions, because nobody actually has read any of those terms and conditions. So what you as a consumer, let's maybe speak from a consumer point of view first, is to ensure that the data that you're giving, and when you agree to the terms and conditions that are being stipulated, even without reading them, is you're giving the right to your data to that particular platform. From a platform point of view, note that that data belongs to the consumer, and how you use it, how you process it, how you store it, you can be sued for it. So it is putting measures in place that you're not going to be selling that data to a third-party person to use it for other things. You're going to store it in a way that nobody's going to leak it or break into your system, such that this data of these people is actually going to be leaked to harmful use, or you're going to use it to leverage it, because I know people use data to leverage on their business. But if that is your business model, then you should be very clear to your consumers that it is. I don't think it stops e-commerce sites from working. It's just being able to put measures in place. But the good thing is that GDPR went before us. So many of the big storage organizations, such as Amazon and the GCPs and Azure of this world, they already have put these measures in place, such that we are able to have this already put in place on your behalf, that it's very hard to break some of these rules unless you are storing the data in your personal computer. So that's my brief on that. And if you are aware of again, it goes back to, if you are aware of these things in a very simple way, it actually enhances your business in the digital age. It protects you as a merchant and as a small business.
Clearly there the issue is using data for the use for which it was intended and not for any other alternative purposes. Aaron, there are lots of questions coming, and I'll just lump them into one. Many persons who are running their small and medium-sized businesses on the e-commerce platforms are wondering, how do you manage to ensure that your business reaches the various demographics, whether it is the youth, the aged, especially in light of the situation that we are now facing? How has DPO positioned itself to address these various markets in a sense?
And that's exactly what the challenge we looked at in the last couple of months, how to provide those SMEs the solution they need, so they can super quickly, very, very, in a very smooth process, can be online. And this is what Nassim and Adam mentioned earlier, the DPO store. The concept is to provide those merchants one solution, one-stop shop, where they can get an e-commerce website, which is already connected to a payment solution, already mitigate and or implemented all the security solutions, exactly as Shiku said, GDPR, PCI DSS, and then the merchant in one connection, in a very fast process, 24 to 48 hours, can have a website which presents to their consumers their services and products. It's not the end, because as you mentioned, the merchant now needs to find their customers, how they do it. So to provide them a very simple URL they can use, provide them like a package where they can market or do some marketing, SMS campaigns, the option to promote their website on Facebook, on Instagram. So the concept is to give those merchants, doesn't matter if it's a micro one, a small merchant or mid-scale merchant, the same solution that will expose them and will connect them with their customers very easily.
Right, welcome to the third and final segment of the Nation Leadership Forum on this World SME Day. Today, we are narrowing the lens on the issues of SMEs. How do they tie to the COVID-19 crisis, and how do they leverage emerging ecosystems to be able to ensure that they consolidate their market footprint and continue to grow? Adam, if I may start with you. Before the break, you did mention the need for scalable solutions as far as SMEs are concerned. And there's a question coming in terms of, we have a largely informal economy. To what degree does this hamper the extent to which we can scale our solutions targeting the SMEs?
So, Julian, just because the majority, as you say, is largely informal, doesn't mean that the informal economy doesn't have the same needs, the same wishes as the formal economy. And everything that we've been doing as MasterCard has been playing towards that. That's the reason we developed the Lab for Financial Inclusion in Nairobi in 2014. And the solutions have been built very much with the user in mind, to say, actually, coming from the informal sector, what are the requirements in order to be able to operate? So, for example, we developed the Farmers Network, we developed Jazaduka. Jazaduka as a concept is something that utilizes the proliferation of feature phones by using USSD technology to allow for orders and payments to actually be initiated. So that's a recognition of the mobile environment that exists here within Kenya. If I look to Tanzania as an example, we're utilizing capabilities over the last few years with the likes of Vodacom and Airtel and Tigo to actually leverage the mobile money wallet to create virtual cards and allow those in the informal economy to gain access. So if they wish to buy from their wholesaler in some other international country, they can get access to a virtual card by converting their mobile money into a virtual card. So I think the focus for us has been very squarely what are the needs, what are the aspirations, and then how can we leverage digital technologies to include that. So it's just about understanding the environment as it exists, and that's the reason we built the labs in Nairobi.
Great point there you're raising, Adam. Crossing over to Shiko, correct me if I'm wrong, Shiko, because you're the expert here, but there's a pervasive concern out here that when it comes to the digital economy and how we can facilitate this, Kenya's policy tends to be capex heavy and opex lead, by which I mean we'll focus on setting up the infrastructure, but the operational maintenance of it is where we don't seem to be investing as much. Is this a valid concern, and how do you think this is impacting the business environment at large and SMEs in particular?
I mean, let me. I'm trying to just structure this in a way that is fair to everybody. It is the government's responsibility to put forth infrastructure. That's what the one thing I would say. If the roads were dilapidated, we will just be complaining that, oh, this road is not working. In the same way, the government has done its best in making sure that we have one of the best fiber connection in the world. Actually, it's in the world, not just Africa. We have the great connectivity as a country. It is up to us to be able to take advantage of that as a rail. So the government is putting the rails. It allows for us to put up a train to run on the rails. So that is one thing. But to be fair, the government is also doing a lot of work around the softer things over and above the infrastructure. The Ministry of Industrialization has great programs for SMEs. There's some in ICT. There's some for young people. There are some for more scale-ups. There are programs by KEPSA which speaks greatly with government around SMEs. So yes, the government is actually doing things. What as the previous speaker was talking about, the 80% of us being informal, it means that because we are informal, we want to hide, and the more the SMEs hide, the more they're not exposed to what the government is able to offer. So the moment you expose yourself, you're able to see what are the programs that the government has put in place to make sure that you can accelerate yourself as an SME. What credit facilities are there? What learning facilities are there? What connections to market are there? Yesterday there was the discussion around the trade agreement with the US. How many SMEs were there to hear what is being discussed about our country? That is part of the softer things over and above the infrastructure that we need to be in place. So it is both a responsibility of the government to push this information out to SMEs, but also as SMEs, it's our responsibility, me being one of them, to go out and find what does government have in place to facilitate me as a business to grow even further. Thank you.
Great, Shiko. And we put out a tweet, and I want to share a question from a viewer here that KNBS data shows us that 46% of SMEs close within their first year of operation. And the question is, what is the one thing perhaps that can be done as a priority to change this narrative? Nasim, if I could start with you, what are your thoughts around this issue? If 46% are closing within their first year, what is one of the things that should be done to change this narrative?
So, Julian, this is a great question. And what this pandemic has done is actually brought to the forefront, to the attention of all of us, the plight of SMEs. So what we have to do is to understand why are these businesses closing within 1 year. And there are several issues that are causing these SMEs to close within 1 year. They face problems like competition, not able to find routes to market, not able to find credit or any kind of funding to grow their businesses. And what the pandemic has done has concentrated our minds on SMEs. And hence we have this SME Day. We've been talking about the SMEs for the last 1 hour. It is exactly the same that was there a year ago, except it has brought it to our attention. And what we have to do is work with SMEs, understand their plight, and provide solutions, not just funding, make technology available. And DTB is doing that with DPO. Make technology available. Make them strong and courageous to work with the supply chains, with a large customer. So really it's a paradigm shift or a paradigm change, which is relevant today, which was relevant a year ago. So my ask to the SMEs is please don't give up, be courageous, talk to everyone. Your big, large customers, your people who supply to you, and see how we can all come together and support you. The whole country is supporting the SMEs. There's a global support for SMEs. They're the backbone of our country. And let me add this very final point, and that is, my parents had a very small duka in a place called Kahama, and I can't imagine what would have happened to me and our family if one day a pandemic would have resulted in closing that duka. And therefore, I empathize with the SMEs, and I wish to tell them this is the time to build strongly so that after the pandemic is over, this perennial problem that the SMEs are facing is sorted for good. And I wish all the SMEs my very best, and they are all in my prayers and in my thoughts.
Great. Aaron, very quickly on the same question. If 4 out of every 10 SMEs are closing within their first year, what would be your proposal in terms of the priority consideration to address this issue?
I will join Nasim. We need all of us to work with the SMEs, because without the SMEs, the economy will not survive. I will give you some example for what DPO decided to do, and we started immediately. I think it was mid-March. For the DPO store, we reduce our rates by, I think, more than 30%. We may work with Diamond Trust, with MasterCard, to provide a very fast settlement solution. We came up with a very, very innovative, very smooth solution where those specific SMEs can use what we call virtual card. If they need to pay their bills, they can use their float, generate a card just to pay their bills immediately without need to move money between their bank account, mobile money, etc. So this is a campaign which is relevant for all of us. Another example is the free DPO store. We decided not to charge for the DPO store. You can take it as it is and have your website almost instantly. That's some examples for how we all must and should and currently supports the SMEs.
Switching gears to Adam, and Adam, as you respond to this question, I would really appreciate if you could speak to the issue of human capital and how it can be enhanced, because that is definitely one of the challenges that many SMEs face in terms of the competencies just to run a business.
So I think in terms of human capital, what's key is providing the capabilities and the opportunities to learn in order to facilitate the growth of the SME. So actually something we've done with our Center for Inclusive Growth is actually develop training programs, which initially were deployed to dukas in Kenya, physically in person. But actually, as we evolved the program and we were teaching, business skills and business management, inventory management, and basic tools around financial acumen, we realized that actually, the nature of the market is such a proliferation of mobile devices. We started then delivering educational capabilities alongside a partner digitally. So actually, to facilitate the dukas, enhancement, the skill set, and grow the capabilities of the duka owners and their staff, we're doing that in association with UNIT to be able to, grow them and enhance that human capital. So that hopefully by doing that, we create a virtuous circle. So the duka owner today maybe has 1-2 more shops in the near future, but those member of staff that's working for them is equally learning, enhancing their skills, so that they can become they can harness their entrepreneurial spirit themselves and actually deploy that for their own benefit. So we grow even further with the SME space, because Julian's, to your point, the human capital is the most important part. Goods can always be procured, services can always be delivered, but it's the people at the heart of it that are actually the ones that make it come to life, and ultimately are the sustainable force for the good of the economy within Kenya and across sub-Saharan Africa in general.
Adam, very solid point there about human capital. Shiko, your stab at the same question regarding the situation as it is and what can be done regarding this present narrative.
So we have to be conscious, and I like the question you asked, Adam, about human capital. The SME sector employs 80%, at least more than 80% of our population. And with that in mind is how do we enhance their sustainability or their lifespan, that's the word. How do you expand their lifespan? And this is by making sure that they learn softly. There are things that SMEs want. Of course, capital is the biggest at this point. It's 90% of their problem is how do I make sure I have enough cash flow to get me off the value of my phone has died. It has disconnected.
Right, Shiko was there commenting on the issues of human capital and how this is very critical for the SME segment. Another question, if I could just get back to Aaron. One of the key issues that is being asked online is, what do you see as the greatest opportunity presented to SMEs by the COVID-19 shock? Because it's not only about doom and gloom, there are opportunities.
Yeah, the main opportunity is their connectivity to the online space. It doesn't matter if you're a tiny duka, if you are a big supermarket chain like Taski's, we mentioned Art Cafe here. Every one of these businesses realize that the online, it's a must. It's part of the day-to-day. And if we'll go back to the SMEs, within few days, within few weeks, those SMEs will face a reality that it was a completely new world for them, that the customer preferred to sit at home, the customer wants to pay online, the customer wants to interact online. So the main opportunity is that post-COVID, we will see hundreds, thousands, I predict hundreds of thousands merchants across the East Africa in general and in Kenya in particular, which went into the online arena. It will be a major change to the economy, to these SMEs. It might be, or it should be, a new era for this sector.
Nassim, what do you see as the greatest opportunity? Aaron there is saying post-COVID we will see perhaps hundreds of thousands of SMEs which have gone into the online platform. What do you see as the key opportunity in this situation, Nassim?
Thank you, Julian. The opportunity for the SMEs is to come together, working on their own in a little place or even in a large place is probably not going to be the story of the future. Coming together, be part of a bigger picture is the way forward. Because what it allows you is a bigger canvas to work with. What it allows you is the capacity or capability to take the knocks that the world will continue to give to SMEs. So coming together, building the platform, getting stronger. And how do you become stronger? You have to work together either with your supply chain or your consumers and be strong. On your own, those days are gone, Julian. The small dukkha that my father ran, those days are gone. You have to be part of a larger movement, whatever it takes. And for me, if the larger businesses can be generous, are willing to give, are willing to accommodate the smaller businesses who remain their suppliers, who remain their bloodline, then the world would be a different place. And for me, this is a huge opportunity for small businesses to move on. Look for larger partners. Be there, give them quality, integrity, work within the ethical framework, and move on. Okay. Never look back.
Right, and that's Nassim speaking to the need for forming ecosystems and synergizing across SMEs, as well as creating linkages with large businesses. Adam, I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are in terms of the biggest opportunity coming out of this situation.
I think, Julian, the biggest opportunity coming out of this situation is from connectivity. It's from e-commerce. We've long believed that e-commerce is going to be the driver for the next wave of economic growth across Africa. We're seeing 300 billion being predicted as being added in GDP across sub-Saharan Africa by 2025, purely by connectivity and increased use of the internet, which is a message to the SMEs out there. The message is, as DPO is facilitating, as DTB is enabling, as many organizations are providing, e-commerce is the opportunity to connect with a whole new wave of customers. And you will see the opportunities therefore grow in terms of how the SME operates. And that opportunity therefore goes way beyond the traditional boundaries around which are commanded by maybe the distance somebody is from a shop. Well, actually now I can go online and I can buy from any duka, or I could buy from any small manufacturer that's operating within Kenya, and I could be sitting in another country and doing that. So for me, the big opportunity that has come from COVID is that we've shown that things will flourish in an interconnected, interoperable world. And so by embracing e-commerce, by embracing the digital ecosystem, the SMEs will flourish as a result.
Great, and we're really pressed for time. I want us to get to our closing remarks. And to start with Shiko, who is back. Shiko, sorry we lost you at some point. If you could just summarize what you're saying and then get into your closing thoughts in light of the discussion today.
I am sorry about that. Today technology is not working for me. So I was saying the most critical thing that SMEs want is, of course, capital to be able to stay afloat that first 18 months of death. And then the next thing, but you cannot just live on money alone. As somebody said the other day, is no amount of money can get me the right network and the right market. So as much as we are pushing so much money to the SMEs, you also need to be able to connect them to the right people. I liked what the CEO of DTB said, is that connect to bigger people, and not necessarily in a competing manner, but in a partnership manner, is who can you collaborate with to be able to do great things. So for example, if you're an SME and you need to import something from China or from Europe, who is the other person that you can collaborate with to bring the cost of your importation down? Those are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. Instead of having a competing mindset, you have like a more growth mindset of bringing people together to be able to grow yourself. The other part is seeking out help. And seeking out help, sometimes people are shy away from that, is mentorship. I know banks offer this kind of support to many people in terms of, here is mentorship in terms of technical support. Here is a lawyer, here is an accountant. And the Sandbox is doing a brilliant job in doing that. And Kayana, they're doing a brilliant job in connecting small SMEs to this technical support that will make them go through that first year or first 18 months of their business and not feeling too lonely that they're facing challenges. And in terms of COVID, my favorite example about COVID is 11 years ago during the SARS outbreak, which in China, as many people have now found out, is that during SARS, that's when like Alibaba and WeChat came up. And I feel like this is an opportunity for Africa and technology and this whole digital pivot to move towards that. So that for me is it's a big opportunity COVID is giving us. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Shiko. And just crossing over to Nasim very briefly for your closing remarks.
Don't ask me anything now.
Nasim, if you can hear me, your closing thoughts very briefly. I think she's having a challenge hearing us. But Adam, just give us your closing thoughts regarding the subject today.
So in closing, Julian, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak and to thank my fellow panelists. I think it's been a very dynamic and engaging session. At these challenging times, we must always remember the SMEs. They are the lifeblood of our economy. They are the lifeblood of the world's economy, and they are drivers for employment that surpass all the major businesses. And so all organizations, MasterCard, DTB, DPO, all of us must come together to ensure that in these challenging times, we're doing everything we can to support the SMEs so that they have a bright future ahead of us, because that bright future is ultimately the bright future of the country.
Great. Aaron, your closing thoughts regarding today's discussion?
Yep, the SMEs, the digital arena, the e-com is just there. And I recommend all the SMEs quickly to step into that arena. I think that's the main tool that will help the SMEs to emerge from the COVID, from the pandemic, in a very good shape. Good luck for them and good luck for all of us.
Many thanks. And I'm told we have Nasim back. Nasim, if you can hear me, just give us your closing thoughts briefly.
Julian, thank you. Yes, I can hear you. And my closing thoughts are, if my roots are my parents who come from, who had an SME, who had a small duka, and I am what I am, then SMEs should not despair. They should work hard, remain committed to their goals, and access whatever the new world is providing. Really, 6 decades onwards, I wish I was in their place now. There is just so much available for them to take and not to despair. And whenever they need help, they should knock those doors.
Many thanks.
And I wish them well.
Right. Many thanks to Nasim and to all our panelists. Thank you so much. We've been having a conversation focusing on SMEs on this World SME Day. 2 take-homes. Collaboration is critical, as well as agility in taking up digital solutions to advance your business. Stay tuned to NTV for more programming after this.
This is NTV. I help women